Welcome to season 13 of the Parenting Aces podcast, a proud member of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we are talking with a tennis enthusiast, a tennis inventor, and oh yeah, he happens to be a CPA in the biotech field. So there's that piece of it, but also a fellow lefty and also a neighbor of mine here in Southern California. Ken Bright is the inventor of Rally Hopper. He was looking to create a solution to a problem every single tennis player has, which is we wind up with all of these stray balls. We have no idea what to do with them. They get buried in the bottom of our tennis bag, adding another several pounds to what's already a heavy thing to tote around. And so Ken thought, gosh, there's got to be a better way to handle this. Rally Hopper was born through a Kickstarter campaign and was very successful on Kickstarter, raised in excess of the amount that they were seeking, and are now getting ready to go to market. So I'm thrilled to have Ken with us to tell us all about Rally Hopper, its applications for junior and college tennis, and basically just to introduce you to a pretty cool guy. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with inventor slash CPA Ken Bright. Welcome to Parenting Aces, Ken. It is so great to see you, and I'm super, super excited for you to share Rally Hopper with our community.
Pleasure to be here, Lisa. Yeah, I'm very excited about it.
And it turns out we're neighbors. We haven't met in person, but I suspect we're going to find each other on the tennis court sometime soon now.
I sure hope so. That would
Yeah.
be it's sad if we didn't.
Exactly. So, like I do with new guests on the pod, I want to start by asking you how you came to tennis. What is your tennis origin story?
Let's see. I started about 11 or 12 years old. I grew up in the high desert, very sprawling landscape. And I grew up riding horses, actually, and playing basketball. And then I think it was right about the time that I grew out of riding horses that I kind of transitioned and needed something new to do and started playing tennis. And had a really fantastic tennis coach by the name of Matthew Bullock, and he really was great at instilling the love of the game. It was just super fun to be out there on the court with him, and and he had a very distinct style, which I adopted. I played one-handed backhand, and which is not less the norm now. And I'm also a lefty, and he helped garner a nice big lefty serve. And it grew from there. I was always just naturally very competitive, and so I started playing USDA tournaments, and did fairly well. I played high school tennis as well, and I didn't play in college. It's the times were different then. Everybody was playing. Multiple sports was fairly common, and I think where we live down in San Clemente these days, if you're not kind of locked into a sport by the time you're a teenager, there's barely any hope of making a high school team or whatever. So, but yeah, that's how I got started, and I was just naturally coordinated, and I took to the sport fairly well. And I've been playing it ever since. And yeah, it still brings me joy every time I get on the court.
Love hearing that. What role did your parents play in your tennis, if any, growing up? I mean, obviously they wrote the check for the coach and for the
Yeah,
tournaments.
yeah. You know, my father was more of a basketball fan. I'm unfortunately not very tall, so my my basketball days were numbered. Even though I actually was good enough to play scout team in college, and so I helped the UCSB women's program prepare for their games. There was a small team of us that would do that, which was pretty fun. But yeah, so he was he knew basketball. He didn't know tennis. I don't know that my mother really knew anything about tennis either, and so it was, they were, I guess, kind of hands off in that regard, which is, can be good, right? I mean,
Yes.
and so, I see that now with my own kids, in terms of, I'm using a very light hand in terms of trying to encourage them, to play, and I'm slow rolling it, and I've got, I think my daughter, my middle child, she's shown a little bit of interest, and I still try to bring, what got me hooked, is just making it fun,
Yeah.
whenever you get out there. So.
I love that. I love that. And you're an avid player now. You play relatively often, I know, in the area, which kind of segues into why you're here today to talk about Rally Hopper, which is this amazing piece of equipment that, for whatever reason, nobody ever thought to create before now. So why don't you give our audience a little bit of the backstory on Rally Hopper, what it is, and why you decided to go down this inventor path?
Sure. It does seem like one of those things somebody should have created by now. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I naturally have lots of ideas. I'm one of those types. I'm left-handed, so I'm in the creative side of my brain, I guess. And when I was really playing a lot, basically daily, this was before my oldest was born. Cracking a new can of balls every day, and by the end of the week, you've got, kind of this collection of, fairly decent match balls that, that are good for practice, or, or the warm up. And, but they were just kind of creating, chaos in my bag. I don't like throwing them away until I beat them to death. And
Chaos and weight. I mean,
I know,
honestly,
right.
right? Yeah.
And so, yeah, when my son was born, um, and I was playing a little less, but I still had all these, tennis balls in there. And I don't know, I was like, there's probably a better way to organize this. And I took one of his old diaper boxes, that came in the mail, and I cut it up, and made my first prototype out of cardboard and tape. And I found that I was like, hey, I can organize about 30 balls in this space. I'm like, that seems significant, right? I mean, when you look at ball tubes that have, say, 18 capacity, and I mean, it's less than an actual standard ball basket, but it's a nice middle ground. And yeah, and then I basically just started iterating from there, in terms of, I built one out of wood and with some hinges, and it looked very Frankenstein's monster. And and but just kind of kept at it. And I like designing and drawing, and and so I'd have new plans made, and and I just assemble them myself, and you just continue to kind of troubleshoot and improve. And I mean, it went on for years, basically. So I'm a CPA by trade. I work primarily with life science companies and biotech companies, and it was just something that I like to do. And then as it really started to improve, I was like, this could actually really be something, as I was kind of adding functionality, and so then I filed for patents, and and then I decided to work with a product development company, and throw some more spaghetti at the wall. And that's a really fun process, if anybody hasn't ever done that before. I mean, because you get all of these creatives, you give them a new idea, and all the things that they come up with is, it's quite fun to see. And so, yeah, it's been a fun journey. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
So let's back up just a second and talk about what rally hopper is and
Oh yeah,
how it can function
sure.
for tennis players in general, but junior tennis players specifically.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of jumped over that. So yeah, so it's a ball hopper that fits in your tennis bag, right? And so from that initial idea of being able to organize the balls in my tennis bag, I added functionality where you can actually pick up tennis balls, you can pour tennis balls out. It's got this, very satisfying sensation of just plucking them between the strings, which is I don't know, it's oddly satisfying. But yeah, it basically so when I started to think about, okay, my own experience in competitive tennis and even what I like to do in my social tennis now, I try to get to the court early, and warm up. And the same thing in tournament days, you want to get there, warm up. Hopefully, you can find a court. And you may not have a lot of time. I mean, certainly they don't give you any warm up time for your matches. I mean, it's just kind of a joke. You're expected to more or less already be warm. And then I'll play my match, and then often, the one thing that I'll come back to is, how well I served on that day, right? And if I didn't serve well, I go hit some more balls afterwards, right? And really, this device is perfect for, that type of scenario, basically, right? If you young competitive tennis, you're traveling. I mean, the thing fits in your tennis bag. You've got all kinds of new utility in your bag now, and then you can be so much more efficient, with your warm up and more effective with your practice when you're not with your coach and you're not lugging around a shopping cart bag or a shopping cart basket, excuse me, or the big cumbersome ball baskets that we all know and love. I mean, which still definitely have their use, right? It's just that I see this as the one piece of equipment that everybody's going to have because it gives you so much additional functionality in terms of making your game more efficient and effective, which is really what I think matters when you're trying to improve.
One of the things that I think is so cool about it is, as you mentioned, it fits in the tennis bag. It fits in the racket compartment of the bag. So the general shape of Rally Hopper is akin to a tennis racket. Um, but it expands when you take it out of your bag. It's got legs that actually stand it up on the court so that it is a proper height to use when you're practicing serves or if you're just, warming up, as you said. And then it also functions as a ball picker upper when you're done hitting. You
Right.
can, grab it by the legs, which are now the handle, and load it back up, right? And I think that's super cool. The other really amazing piece of this, which I love, is that you are recycling a product that is typically been just filling up landfills. And now you're utilizing it to create this new useful piece of equipment. Talk about the strings and
Yeah.
how you're doing that.
Yeah. So there was so a bit of kind of my and my wife's kind of ethos, or what makes us who we are is we're very interested in circularity, the sustainability, and so we were extremely mindful in terms of how the product was, the material we used and how it was manufactured. I mean, it's made from there's three pieces basically, and then the strings basically, right? And I forget how the inspiration to actually use string came about. But I mean, ultimately, we were just looking for a lightweight way to retain the balls, and so we we went to local tennis shop here in Dana Point called Strings, and Tony over there is great. And he, we said, we're looking at how we can, kind of have a bigger impact on the game of tennis and make it more sustainable, because it is just so resource intensive, from all the string that gets used and the tennis balls. And we estimated that there's enough string sold or used every year to wrap the earth twice.
Wow.
And it's probably more than that, to be honest. But and so, there were organizations that were trying to recycle tennis balls. We didn't really find anything about the string, though. There wasn't anybody doing that. We live by the ocean here. There are companies that recycle fishing string, so which is also nylon. So it's like, okay, this can be done, and it doesn't have fish guts on it or anything like that, right? So
Thank goodness.
I know, right? And so, we decided, like, okay, let's collect some of this string and see what that process looks like, right? And so we did that for an entire year. We ran a Kickstarter campaign, and there's some really cool photos on there of the piles of polyester and nylon that we collected. And but one of the really interesting things that we didn't expect was that there was all of this virgin unused material in there from the ends of the string spools, right? So you buy these spools of string to string rackets, and they, let's say they will string 10 rackets, but they always give you a little bit of wiggle room there at the end, because there's varying size of strings or string quantity that's needed per racket. And so you'd end up with this couple feet of material that doesn't get used. And it was like, oh, hey, let's design this thing in a way so that we can use those, right? And in my experience in my day job of working for pharmaceutical companies and biotech, you have to find kind of alignments, and in what you're doing, right? So there's certainly the first thing of like, okay, am I creating a product that's really solving a problem, right? And but then that next step of like, okay, well, yeah, if that is a problem, is there alignment or all the incentive pieces and components in the right place so that doctors are going to actually order my test or use my drug or whatever it is, right? And the same is true for most industries, right? And so we're trying to basically use this product as a way to find that alignment to make the game more sustainable, right? And so that we'll sell these hoppers through your traditional brick and mortars, the stringers that you're going to, right? And that you have your multiple touch points with every year, and supporting their business, and and asking them like, hey, okay, we want you guys to be the point of contact here. Please start, in exchange for that, that financial benefit, please start sorting your string, which is really not that big of a burden. I mean, the way that they cut it, they cut them out, and the boxes that we ship the rally hoppers to, you can use one for nylon, one for polyester, and you can ship it back to us, and then we'll recycle that material. And there's plenty of instances of the big brands, the Nikes, Adidases of the world, that are interested in trying to improve their carbon footprint and and the sustainability of the various sports that they're supporting, and this just represents a new feedstock of a material that's currently unused, or not collected. It's ending up in the landfill, and we're using so much energy and resources to to make these materials, right? And it's kind of silly that that they just kind of end up in the trash when we're that they can be recycled. And there's I forget which brand it is. There's a recycled string product now. Like they're making the string from recycled plastic. I think it's a polyester. I think it's a Luxolon string, I think, is doing it. I mean, so there is interest in trying to improve, the sustainability of tennis as well as all the other sports out there. And so we're trying to use the rally hopper as a way to put a new system in place. I mean, like, if at the end of the day, if I could get that done, like, that's a win. Like, we're basically something that's, not being recycled is actually recycled, and there's a benefit, being added to the game. Like, that would just be awesome.
I love that. Do you know about how many rackets worth of string it takes to make one rally hopper?
That's a good question. We haven't done it yet, or that is ultimately the goal, right? I mean, so I think I estimated that, from if we collected 100% of what was being used, the amount of material, that we estimated that's being wasted every year, we could make like 20,000 hoppers a year.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And one of the cool features of rally hopper too is if the string breaks, which we all know, tennis string breaks, you as the end user can just restring it.
Yeah, it's just hand tensioned. You just, put it in there, and just put a new string back in. And I honestly, I think that's there's something fun to be had there. And, like, I look, this is my best effort at fitting a rally hopper, or fitting a ball hopper in a tennis bag. Mm-hmm. And I hope my patents hold up, and I'm able to operate freely operate without the big boys coming to get me too soon. But I imagine that somebody's going to come up with another cool way to do it, that I didn't think of. But ultimately, and about the strings, it's like, okay, I put them all more or less parallel, right? You could change your strings, and Ross, I mean, like, there is, right now these builds are out of, aluminum sheet metal. I mean, you can drill your own holes, additional ones. You could, I mean, there's, I kind of am expecting to see those sorts of things happen, right? I mean, because, that's what kids like to do. They, play around with stuff, and, and make it their own. And, and you can absolutely do that with this. It's this beautiful canvas that you can slap all your stickers on it, and, and show who you are when you're stepping out on the court.
I love that. And as an adjunct to that, you are also creating colorful ones. You're working with teams, and at the high school level, I assume at the collegiate level, if not already, that's coming. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's basically where we'll be starting our go-to-market efforts. Mostly, I mean, that's the core market, basically, right? Is high school players, right? And there's been great feedback from the coaches at both the high school and the collegiate level. There's interest, and so I will hopefully be placing a couple with USC and UCLA.
Go Bruins!
This year, and then our local tennis team here in San Clemente, Coach Gary over there has been very supportive and is interested. And I was able, through the campaign, I was able to get my own alma mater, Apple Valley, supported, and so we'll be producing all of those. But yes, the way I envision it, I mean, is having one of these, or up to 6 of these, for every school, basically, as part of, like, their team equipment. Not to mention basically, individual players owning their own, right? I like this idea of like, okay, you're assigning one to your number one singles player, and it says number one singles on it down the side. Like, and when you're going, to your away matches and you pull this thing out of your bag and it says, the Triton's on it, and it's in the San Clemente red and black colors, um, I in my head, in my head, it's going to look amazing, right? And so I have renderings of those, and I think it looks pretty awesome. And
Can the string be stenciled too? Like, could they stencil the mascot on
I
there
mean,
or whatever?
there's only technically you could, but there's plenty of it. That's the other cool thing is there's plenty of real estate on this thing that you don't need to. You can put you can put a solid, 4-inch circle sticker on there,
Mm-hmm.
or that's an estimate, 4-inch. I think that's probably all right. And so you can have logos up the wazoo. When you fold the legs down, I mean, there's two panels to it. You can do it on the outside and on the inside of it. I mean, so I definitely see that the high school branding as a big thing. And then certainly, the college game is massive as well. And so unfortunately I'm plugged in with Allison Swain up at USC, and I will hopefully be putting one of these in her hands soon, and some other tennis coaches around the country that I'm connected to, and and I'm just excited to see where it goes, because again, the traveling aspect of it is a big one, right? Especially
Right.
at for high school tennis, but even like the more so the competitive USTA, and certainly in college, and you just, it's cumbersome to carry baskets, especially if you're flying. You're not gonna, if you're gonna fly somewhere, you're not gonna take tennis baskets with you, or maybe they do. I don't know, but this will be a much more elegant solution, and so I think it's going to take off because of that.
Yeah, I love that. And, you mentioned how it's great for the competitive junior player. I mean, I just keep thinking back to my days of loading up the trunk of my car to go to a tournament and everything's jammed in there, and how nice it would have been to have something like this that my son could just put in his racket bag. Now he's got, a significant number of practice balls to go warm up his serve, to go warm up with a buddy, whatever it is. And then it folds right back up, goes right back in the bag, and doesn't take up space in the already very crowded car. And it's lightweight to boot, which is a big bonus. And as anyone who has dealt with traveling to tournaments with their kids can attest. But can you tell us a little bit about the price point of this and where it's going to be available?
Yeah, so that's still very fluid conversation, certainly in my household.
And
But
let me just interrupt, and I want to say that we're recording this. Your Kickstarter campaign just ended,
mhm,
and you were successful. You actually raised more than what you were seeking, which is
a little
amazing.
bit.
Congratulations to
Thank you.
that. So my questions may be a little premature, and by the time this airs, we probably will have answers or more concrete answers, which we'll have in the show notes. So
Yeah,
be
I
sure
mean
and check those out.
so in the campaign, I mean the price was like 189. And so I mean, which is it's significantly more than what what you're used to paying for, just a typical hopper. But there's also, there's a ton of, of extra functionality, and it's the first thing, right? It's the first one. Nobody's tried to do this like this before. So it's really hard to estimate, the intrinsic value that, that the market's going to put into, place on it. And so we've priced it around, kind of where a tennis racket is priced at. And but that's also paying for American manufacturing, local manufacturing, like the, you know, I said that before, that we've got this thing down to only 3 pieces, and that's from aluminum sheet metal that's powder coated, and so you can very efficiently manufacture this basically anywhere in the States, and which is really really cool. I mean, I'm a big believer in that we need to get products made as close to their end use. Not that there's anything wrong with having things made up overseas, but that doesn't apply to everything, right? And so that's that point was important to me. And so yeah, so that's factors in kind of how we've priced it. And then ultimately, we're there is that social component of we're trying to take responsibility for the game a bit, in terms of that there is a lot of resources that goes into it and are used and aren't being recycled properly, right? And we're definitely there's gonna be room to drive down the cost of these in terms of at scale, right? Because
sure, the more you make, the cheaper they become.
The more, yeah, that's just a given.
Yeah.
But ultimately, there is a cost to putting in place the infrastructure that's needed, to do large scale recycling, and that's the challenge, right? Is that basically you have to collect a significant amount of material, which should be actually fairly easy to do once it's in place, and we can get that going. But yeah, I mean, it's costly to set all of those things up, and so I'm optimistic that the early adopters will be out in force and able to support and help help the company grow and in these early stages. And and then hopefully we can get that system in place, and then we can start driving down costs as we expand.
Love it. One thing that occurred to me as you were talking about like the teams using these and you putting stickers or logos or whatever, is this whole notion of brand building for individual players now that NIL is in place with the NCAA. And what a cool opportunity to showcase your personal brand when you're at a tournament or you're on the practice court. I'm having visions of, TikTok and Instagram in my head of, people really personalizing their rally hopper to reflect their personal brand, then building their social media, utilizing that. And so lots of really cool ways to not only get the utilitarian aspect of this that you intended when you first created it, but also to kind of expand that into serving other purposes, the recycling, at the forefront. And I really applaud your efforts to solve for this problem of string waste and coming up with easy solutions for the stringers themselves to actually get that leftover product or discarded product back into your hands so that you can use it to build this very useful rally hopper for people. So kudos for that. I think that's very cool.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
yeah, you mentioned that you're going to be selling through the string shops and a variety of locations. Since this is airing mid-February-ish, any idea where people will be able to purchase Rally Hopper at that time?
Yeah, so working on the online platform right now, so we'll have that up. So basically, we just wrapped the Kickstarter campaign, or at least the funding portion, last week, or on Sunday, and so we're working towards delivering those. And so if people that want to follow along, they can go to rallyhopper.com. They can also check it out on Kickstarter. And I don't know if I'm going to have this up. I will endeavor to have it up by, so I just found out, by Valentine's Day. And certainly at least to take email addresses so people can follow along and with the actual launch. But yeah, that's where it'll be. And then on Instagram, we're at Rallyhopper, and starting to build some of that content. And that's an excellent point about the NIL. And, I think, that's one of the things that I really like about this design is the ability to kind of, to brand it. I've specifically got my patent coverage, where all the majors are, because I envision these being sold, at the major tournaments and branded in Wimbledon purple and green, and Roland Garros, etc. So so it's pretty, that aspect is pretty cool.
Well, I'm hoping I'm going to run into you at Indian Wells this year. We had talked about
That's
trying
the plan.
to connect there. Yeah.
It's still on my calendar. I'm looking forward to it, to come out to the tournament, and we'll do some live content. I did just have I got the Rally Hopper in the hands of Vanya King, the former Wimbledon and US Open doubles champion, at a clinic, and that was pretty cool. And it's the photo that I have of it when she's talking, it's just so very striking. It's I like the way it looks.
Yeah, it's very elegant.
Yeah, I don't know. So it looks cool. And I don't know, that the strings, it's kind of interesting because the balls just kind of look like they're floating there, like they're magically kind of, they're kind of hard to see. It's like, or those balls are just stacked. So
well, it's very cool. And I'm super excited to see what happens over the next several months with this. I know that it's going to take off because it really does solve a big problem for tennis players at the junior level, at the adult level. I mean, you should see the number of balls sitting in my bag. And then I have a separate, like, reusable grocery bag that I just keep in my trunk that I throw the used balls into. And I have a dog. My dog's very happy to get the used balls, but at some point, like, enough already. So. Right. Well, Ken, it's been a pleasure chatting with you and getting to learn more about Rally Hopper. I, again, wish you all the success and look forward to running into you on the courts, and especially running into you at Indian Wells. We're going to have a fun time. So for those of you not following Parenting Aces and not yet following Rally Hopper on Instagram, be sure you do that so that you can catch our content when we're out in the desert together. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Thanks so much. And to my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. And we will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.